We're here in the middle of the exhibition Darker, Lighter, Puffy, Flat that opened last November. And it is an exhibition, to put it very simply, about breasts. And actually what this exhibition is asking, or what the overall question is concerning the exhibition, is why are we still so obsessed, offended, scandalized by the view of naked breasts, especially women's breasts. So what we tried with this exhibition is actually, on the one hand, to look a little bit into the art history and cultural history of the different depictions of breasts, but also use the breast as a vehicle to speak about many other topics that we thought were important and relevant for the times we're living in, such as sexuality, gender, interspecies relationships, motherhood, breastfeeding, but also disease and sickness or censorship. So what I would like to do in this little tour is actually speak more about the historical works that are also mostly important for the Austrian art history. And it's something that I'm very happy and proud and grateful that we could manage to have artists such as Bruno Gironcoli, Maria Lassnig, VALIE EXPORT, or also Christina Ramberg, who were, of course, very important in their own right and very important for later also feminist works. And so I thought it's very meaningful to combine their work and their legacy with actually younger contemporary positions that very much are built upon this foundation. And one of these artists is Bruno Gironcoli. Gironcoli was known for actually quite large-scale sculptures that very often were strange, let's say, agglomerations of babies, human bodies, machines that kind of interacted with each other. And this particular work that we have here, we can see a small baby, but it is a bit abstracted. It is a bit uncanny in the way that it's also placed and positioned. And it's lying actually in a bed of the Edelweiss flower. And the Edelweiss flower is very typical for Austria. There is this lore that, for instance, young men are supposed to go to the mountains and pick an Edelweiss so that they can propose to their beloved lady. But then, of course, there is also very sort of dark history connected to the Edelweiss, because it has been known to have been Hitler's favorite flower. So it was also misused a lot in this kind of nationalist context. And I think that Gironcoli is, of course, also someone that was very much concerned with this aspect and history of Austria. And so I think that we could say perhaps that this work is, of course, also a way to critique our upbringing here and these ideas that we're fed or were fed by this National Socialist Party. But now again, I guess we could say that the right is again very strong, has gotten a lot of power. So these ideas are still very much alive, even if they are now disguised in other forms and not using these old symbols as we used to know them. This is a work by Maria Lassnig. We also have a painting of hers that we will see later. She was actually also best known for her paintings, but she only gained recognition actually quite late in her life, as so many other women that were part of the Austrian feminist avant-garde. But what is perhaps less known is that she was also a very interesting experimental filmmaker. And in 1968, she moved to New York, and with other women, they established a group of experimental filmmaking, which was also very much a reaction to the very patriarchal, male-dominated art world, and of course also world at large. And we chose this work for the exhibition because, well, it's titled Art Education. It's from 1976. And it is a very humorous and very honest account about the depiction of women, of nude women in art history. So she pokes fun at this, as is very often her way of doing things, with a lot of humor. And of course, it's also interesting to see this in Vienna, because a lot of these paintings are in collections in Vienna and they are available to a larger public. And for instance, there is a short dialogue that I think says a lot, and it's a Vermeer painting that you can actually find at the Kunsthistorisches, And the woman posing for the painter says, well, you treat me like an object. And he responds, you are an art object now. And then he demands she take her clothes off. And when she refuses to do so, he complains, you're not a good model. You have no breasts anyway, and you're too old. So yeah, we see this kind of run through art history and similar humorous, but of course also in a way very telling images and scenes of art history where mostly women were depicted nude, whereas in the museum the painters that were female were basically non-existent. And here we can see the painting of Maria Lassnig that I was speaking about earlier. It has a very telling title, namely Dream of the Ideal Bosom, Bosom Wish or Bosom Illusion. With this painting, I think we can say that Lassnig tries to bring together conflicting notions that women experience, especially in relation to their breasts. On the one hand, Lassnig was of course a feminist, but she was also a woman painter in a very male-dominated environment. At the same time, she was also just a woman that still was subjected, of course, to all sorts of societal expectations and pressures and notions that we just grow up with. So I think that's where also the title, or this threefold title, comes from. And as is very often the case with Lassnig, she tries to express a sort of Körpergefühl is the term in German, so something like the body feeling through these brush strokes. And especially in this painting, for instance, I think, of course, the breasts are very exaggerated, they're very in your face, and they almost seem to perhaps even, take away the attention of the aging body, which is also sort of taboo almost, to show the aging body, especially of women. And what I was mentioning before, that I'm very grateful that we were allowed, especially by the Maria Lassnig Foundation, to have this work, but also show it alongside young contemporary Viennese painters. For instance, here next to Lassnig's work, we see Marianne Vlaschits' work, which is called Deluge. And I find it actually it's a really nice pairing, in my opinion, not only because, of course, it traces this legacy, but also in a sense that we have, with Marianne's work, we have this landscape here. It looks like somehow of a sort of sci-fi movie. And only if we look very closely, we can see two breasts embedded in this whole bodily landscape. And in my opinion, this could be a sort of look into the future, or into a future where we're perhaps not so obsessed anymore with breasts, and they just integrate themselves and just are not something scandalous, sexualized, objectified anymore.